Dr Ruth Knight is a researcher and lecturer in nonprofit management and social enterprise at QUT's Australian Centre for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Studies. Please make Dr Ruth Knight very welcome.
Thank you. Has everybody had a nice plate of culture this morning? All right, well, it's lovely to be with you today, and I have the privilege of starting this conversation, which I'm very passionate about, and very excited to hear what you think about this as well. I wonder how many of you, let's just do a little straw poll though, how many of you have actually heard of the term culture eats strategy for breakfast? Have you all heard of that? Yeah, it's quite a well-known saying, and it is often attributed to Peter Drucker and sometimes even Edgar Schein, both two great scholars who've done a lot of work and research into the areas of both management and corporate culture. And they really believe that culture is very important to us as organisations. And over the past 10 years, as I've become more and more interested in culture, I have had some fantastic conversations around coffee and lunch and breakfast around this saying. What does it actually mean? And is it really true? And the question that I get most of the time is, well, Ruth, can you prove it? Where's the evidence? So I thought I'd just show you a couple of photos to show you some of the evidence. Let's have a look. Here's the evidence that what can happen is that strategy, which I hope you all have, I hope that you've all sat down this year at some point and talked about the strategy of your team or your organisation. And these people who are involved in these projects have also sat down at some point and developed a strategy. But what happens when we try to implement strategy? The human factor comes in. Strategy is only successful if we have a good culture, because it's the human element of decision-making, of communication, of keeping to timelines, of reflecting on what's going well, what's not going well. It's only when we have great culture that strategy can really be fulfilled and we can start to get some success. So what is culture then? Maybe we need to just understand what culture is. Well, culture comes down basically, if we want to just sum it up in a nutshell, is really the shared attitudes, the values, the goals and the practices within an organisation, which helps people think, say and do in ways that create success. And it's really about influencing people to achieve their role or to achieve the goals of the organisation. And often it's very unconscious, it's very unwritten, the way that we turn up to work, the way that we communicate, the way that we think about certain things. So why is culture so important for fundraisers and organisational leaders? Why would we be talking about culture and how important it is for you? Well, the reality is that how people think about fundraising and philanthropy and the way that you are trying to raise funds for your organisation is critical. Because we know that if people are thinking, saying, doing things in contrary or not in alignment with what your strategy is, then you are not going to be able to achieve the success that you want. So let's just think about how some people in some cultures might think about fundraising right now. And this is what some of our research and some of our conversations is telling us. What we're hearing is that people are saying, I'm not a fundraiser, that's Leslie's job. I don't know any philanthropists, so don't ask me. I'm just an employee, I'm not a donor. I don't feel comfortable asking people for money. Oh, I've got ideas that need money and funding, but my ideas aren't valued, so I'm not going to share them. And that's got nothing to do with me. I'll wait for the fundraiser to do that. So what's happening is those are kind of examples of what people are seeing, thinking, and their attitudes towards fundraising. And what this is meaning and the consequences of that is that fundraising, although it's becoming professionalised, which is a great thing, but it's also becoming very siloed. It means that everyone else doesn't feel that they are a fundraiser. And it means then it's left to the fundraiser, or it's left to the department that is, has to do that, left up to them, which also has some big consequences in terms of what you're trying to achieve. So what can we do then? What does it mean then if we want to actually look at the culture and say we don't want a culture where people don't understand what philanthropy or fundraising is? We want everybody to feel that they are part of our strategy. Well, a couple of organisations have been thinking this through, and they have come up with the term a culture of philanthropy. And I just want to explain to you this very, very quickly. So what is a culture of philanthropy? A culture of philanthropy ensures that what people hear and say, so they're hearing and saying all the time, is that they are part of the fundraising team. They feel they have an opportunity to be donors themselves. They feel confident and able to articulate a case for philanthropy. And they share with others the many ways that they can give. And they don't see philanthropists as, just the wealthy people that give big gifts. They kind of sense and they talk about everybody being a giver and everybody having this sense of we're part of the fundraising team. So when people understand what philanthropy is, they don't just think it's about wealthy people giving big gifts. It's about relationships and more than just money. In fact, this quote here really talks about that everybody sees that philanthropy is about relationships. And everyone in your organisation can build positive relationships with potential donors and also current donors, because they see themselves as donors. They give to their own organisation. They see the power of giving and how that helps the organisation. So they work together. And these organisations develop a culture where people from the board member all through staff, volunteers, everybody involved with the organisation, they all feel accountable to implementing this strategy that you have to raise funds for your organisation and what you're going to do with it. Well, we've been doing just a little bit of research at ACPNS. Russell, myself, have been looking at the literature, and we've been trying to explore this and say, well, what does it mean that a culture of philanthropy really values? And we're coming so far down to these 4 things, and it'd be interesting to hear what you think the values are of a culture of philanthropy. But we've come up with 4 things so far. Is that we understand that these cultures really value generosity. There's a sense of generosity throughout the organisation. Definitely collective goals, particularly around fundraising. So everybody feels a sense that there's a collective goal to raise money, to bring donors in, to have good relationships with donors. Relationships, so that is the third value, that people really believe in working together with each other and with the fundraising department, so internal relationships and external relationships. And also inspiring others. So a lot of good role modelling happening about giving, but also then sharing that with others and inspiring others to give as well. So I thought that this morning we would just do a little bit of conversation. I've very briefly described what a culture of philanthropy is. And what I'm doing is going out to speak with organisations about this. And we're getting them to do a little exercise that we're going to do right now if you're willing to participate. We're doing something called an empathy map, which is a tool to kind of really understand the culture in your organisation. And it's a very quick exercise where we try to put ourselves in the shoes of someone in your organisation. So it could be a board member, it could be a leader, it could be a staff member or a volunteer. So you would know in your organisation those types of people in your organisation. As a team, you would then think about that person, you would come up with a kind of persona, and you would place yourselves in their shoes and say, well, what are they thinking, hearing, seeing, doing in relation to philanthropy? And from that, you can start to understand what are some of the challenges and what is the culture right now, and what do you want the culture to be. So on your tables, I'd like you to pull out, if you can see, this little worksheet here. It's called Eating Culture for Breakfast. Can you all find one here? So what I've got on here, you'll see, is Hi, I'm Bill. Now, because we're short of time today, I've created this persona of Bill. And I don't mind, it is Bill, it is a male, but you can change it to a female if you want to. Okay, this is just a little tester of, or an idea that you would develop a persona for someone sitting on your board. And Bill is 45 years old. He has 3 kids, and he's served on your board for about 3 years. Now, inside this little worksheet, you'll see there are 4 areas to make some notes. As a table, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. And I want you to just brainstorm, and this is quantity, not quality, okay? Just get loads of ideas down. I want you to just ask your table and just discuss, what does Bill think about philanthropy? What does he feel about philanthropy? What does he see or what does he not see? And what does he do in regards to philanthropy and this culture within your organisation? Now, I know that you're from different organisations, so we're not trying to get this very specific. We're just trying to give you a sense of an idea of how to put yourself in someone's shoes to get a sense of the culture. Does everybody understand what we're going to do? All right, well, I'm going to start the clock, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes to have, and if you can write down, please, because I'm going to collect these back in just to see what some of your thoughts are at the end. So if you can use a pen, or at least somebody write down the ideas, that would be great. Okay, let's go. Okay. So I'm just going to pick a few random ones here, and because some of you may have come up with similar ideas, but what we would do, obviously, if we were doing this for real in a workshop, is that we would have a look at all of your ideas and then obviously go to Bill and actually ask him himself. But this is a way of just getting into his shoes and understanding what culture looks like within your organisation. Okay, I'm just turning it all over. Okay, so let's have a look at what Bill thinks. Thank you. All right, let me just... Okay. Bill thinks we need money. Bill's thinking about budgets. He thinks he wants to learn more about why people give. Okay, so he has some interest in learning. He thinks that everybody has something to contribute, but he thinks there should be a structured return on investment. So he needs a comprehensive strategy for fundraising. He's not going to tick that budget item unless you can tell him what the return on investment is. He thinks there's one good fundraiser in the organisation, and that one fundraiser is in putting on one good event to raise some money. Definitely needs more revenue, but who's going to get it? Not him. He's got lots to learn, so he's probably feeling a lack of confidence. If he doesn't understand fundraising or philanthropy, then he's lacking confidence. So he's aware of philanthropy and he's thinking of big donors. So in his mind, philanthropy is just wealthy people giving big gifts, and you're the fundraiser, you've got to go do that. What else have we got? So he's donating his time, so he probably doesn't need to give any money. He knows philanthropy is important, however, he doesn't know where to start, and that we can just pay people to do that anyway. Yeah. All right, so that's maybe some of the ideas about what Bill's thinking. So what's he feeling? He's anxious about asking people to be a donor. He feels passionate, but he's wondering about his network. He feels he has a network, but maybe how does he do that ask? He feels helpless in the plight of others, so he doesn't quite know how to go about doing this strategy. He feels a level of responsibility, but again, might not be feeling confident. Okay, he feels a bit of an obligation, but he feels his role is to help Leslie. All right, so his role is to help the fundraiser, not to be a fundraiser. All right, that's some good feels. What does he see? He sees funny faces reflected back at him when he talks about philanthropy with his board colleagues. Yeah, he sees the reports and the numbers, but he doesn't really understand what they mean. Yep. He sees financial reports, but what does that mean in regards to philanthropy? He sees big donors, and he's told about all the big donors, but maybe he doesn't see all the smaller donors, the givers within the organisation. He sees a changing environment, and maybe he doesn't feel very confident, again, if there's a changing environment both for philanthropy but also in fundraising, and maybe he doesn't feel up to date with the types of strategies that fundraisers are using. What else? So he sees the big donors, he sees the names of who gives, so he's aware of the details but not the in details. So yeah, so it's a kind of broad level again. Okay, let's just read one more about what he feels. He's sick of the requests for money, and he wonders if he's doing enough himself to raise the support. So, yeah, and maybe let's just end with a couple of do's as well. What is he doing? And the other thing that we were talking earlier is somebody said, he doesn't see fundraising on his board role description, and he doesn't see it on job descriptions throughout the organisation as well. So if fundraising or contributing to fundraising goals is not on job descriptions, then he's not perceiving that everybody has a role to play. And so what is he doing? He is perhaps using his connections, or he doesn't know how to use his connections. He struggles with the nuances of fundraising. He buys tickets to events but may not attend. Yeah. So I haven't got time, obviously, to read them all out, but I am going to do that afterwards. Later on today, I'll go and have a nice good look at that and see if I can gain some understanding from you about some of the culture within your organisation. I suppose I just wanted to get you started with this conversation, and I hope that did. When you started talking about what a person in your organisation is thinking, seeing, hearing and doing in relation to philanthropy, you've got to ask yourself a question, which is how might we develop or overcome some of those challenges? Because if Bill as a board member is not seeing himself as a fundraiser, he doesn't understand fundraising, he doesn't have confidence to ask people to become donors. If those are all challenges for your board members, what on earth are your staff and your volunteers feeling like? It's absolutely going to be the same for them, and they are going to leave it to fundraising and the department that is, asked to do that. So I'd like to just leave this little, segment with you, I suppose, with this picture, which really just maybe encourages you to think about the strategy that you might have. I'm pretty sure you've got a wonderful fundraising strategy. You've probably, nutted it all out, said, exactly what you want to do this year and how much you want to raise and what you want to raise it for. I'm pretty sure you've got a good strategy. But reality is that unless you get people on board and you actually explain it in a way that people understand, it won't happen like you think it does. So the whole point of empathy mapping and actually understanding how people think in terms of your culture around philanthropy is to get them on the same page and get them to believe that they are part of your fundraising team and that you are supporting them to raise the funds. So I hope that's just got your mind thinking and challenged, and yeah, I'm going to hand it back to Leslie.